Okay, so
Hey, Peter, it's Ray Scheimer. Thank you.
hey, Ray.
Nice to know that we're connected.
We are just like that.
All right, good.
So I'm gonna put the slide on the screen, and let's make sure that's working properly.
Okay.
So what are you seeing now?
Yeah,
Is it-
I'm seeing lakes. Yeah, I'm seeing the slide of lakes with the Amanusa Ravine Trail sign and going up towards the summit.
And do you see me and you?
I do. I see both of us in the upper right corner.
Okay, and then in the upper right corner, there should be a something you can click on to set whether it's the speaker or the gallery of people that you look at.
Let's see. I have one thing. If I click, says swap shared screen with video.
No?
Not that, huh? Hide thumbnail video, show small active speaker video, and the other is, no, two blue lines.
There should be a 3 bars or whatever on the upper
Oh,
right
wait a
corner.
second. Well, there's 3 bars on your, well, 3 dots on your picture. And if I touch that, whoops, that brings you up to full screen.
Okay, but there should be a place where you select, when you right click, you get the choice of whether to show gallery or speaker view.
Okay. Hide self view, rename. Yeah, am I right clicking on my own picture or on your picture?
You're right clicking on a symbol at the upper top of the screen.
Oh,
Upper
where it has
top
full-
right side of the screen.
Okay, that says exit full screen.
No, this should be another one. Let's see.
Oh, wait a minute, view options.
Yeah. Click,
So what
right
view
click on,
options? Side by side mode.
yeah, put it in side by side mode.
Okay, got it.
Then between the slides and the people, if you put your cursor there and push, you should be able to make one bigger and the other smaller.
Double click to exit. Whoops.
So just pointing between the edge of the slide and the edge of the people view,
Oh, right.
you can move
Oh,
that
yeah.
left or right.
Correct.
So then you have a choice of either seeing the slide really good or the people really good.
I got it. No, I'm
Okay.
not seeing me any longer. I'm just seeing, then there is a gallery view. Oh yeah, that's gallery view. Okay. Yep.
Good. So that way everybody gets a choice as to how their screen is filled.
Right. Good. Well, this is great. This is exciting.
Yeah, it is. There's a lot of excitement out there too. I'm getting a lot of excited emails.
You know, I haven't been back to lakes, oh my gosh, since, well, let's see. I think the last time I was there was 1986 or 87. I spent a couple of days and was able to stay in the crew room and help out, but I haven't been back since then. And I'm 80, I'll be 83 in January. So if the huts are open next summer, I'd like to go back. If I can get up and down the mountain and go as a volunteer, for an ambassador thing.
Yeah, I haven't been there in 5 years at least, or 10 years. I haven't been there since they remodeled.
Well, I know it's totally different since I was there, or I guess it's a lot different, I should say.
I got to go grab some batteries.
All right.
Oops.
Oh, there are 43 people, huh, that registered?
Yep.
Oh, it's a lot. And when did you work at Lakes?
60, 61, 62.
Oh, okay.
Huh.
I can see your cursor moving around.
Yeah, I guess my cursor has to be in the window for my slide change to work.
Right.
What
Well,
I was
can see
trying
you-
to get,
yeah,
what I was trying to get to is this slide. Look at 2010 for Lakes.
wow.
That's all changed since I've been there. So I guess I haven't been there for more than 10 years.
Yeah, like I said, I was there last in 80, I think it was 86, 87, I think.
I
86 or
think
87.
for everybody on this call, the 1950 picture is pretty much what we knew Lakes as.
Exactly. Yep. That's how it was when I was there. I volunteer at my local hospital, and one of the gals that I have been volunteering with, she's now started her freshman year in college, but I've been showing her pictures of all of this, and she's really excited and may come back next year if I get to go back there and to take a look at it, and would think that she might like to work in the huts. So it'd be kind of fun to share it with her.
Uh-huh.
The 2010 rebuilding makes the place look almost like the Mount Washington Hotel on the summit.
It's pretty amazing, isn't it?
It's a lot of building, huh? Wow.
Oh, actually, the difference to 1950 is really this back dining wing,
Right. Yeah.
and,
Emerald,
and
I
a
guess.
few feet here. You know, it's and I guess maybe a few feet here.
Well, yeah, I don't know. Yeah, when I was last there, the crew room was the same. I could really get a kick out of it. What do we have? 11 on the crew now. And when we worked there, or at least when I worked there, we had only 6, and one of us was always on days off. So basically, we were running it with 5 people.
You know, when I was there
Well, I hook up my microphone.
in 1960, it went to 7 people.
Yeah, and we had no helicopter bringing anything in. We brought everything in ourselves.
Yep.
So I'm thinking these kids that are working today, they're got 11 people and helicopter bringing in stuff, and they only pack a couple days a week versus our 7 days a week.
Men just aren't what they used to be.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure 20 or 30 years from now, they'll say that about the crews of today.
Well, that's the quickest way to piss off the young people.
Well, I would never say that to them.
I can hear.
Yeah.
Well, I should be able to hear, but I'm not hearing. Why not?
We're hearing you, Larry.
Video participants chat.
Yeah, I'm hearing him.
but he's not hearing us.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
I can't hear a damn thing. Hello? Can anyone hear me?
Yes,
I
we
hear
can
you.
hear you.
Okay, I can hear you too. I was
Oh,
trying to
good.
hook up my microphone, but it didn't work. So,
We're
Don't we
hearing
all
you
look
very
old?
well.
Don't we all look old?
That's because we are old.
Yeah. I hate to admit it, but it's true. Yeah. Yeah, I remember the story of the guy called Father Bill. You remember Nick Howe's book on, what was it called? Not without danger, not without risk, something like that. He told the story of Bill Cunningham, told it very well. Yeah. Peter, I'm not hearing you.
I
That's
think
'cause we're
because
not
we're
talking.
speaking. We were letting you speak.
Ah, okay. That's very kind of you. Are we the only four who are on here right at the moment?
Right
I
now,
only
just the
see-
three.
I only see three of us.
Oh, well, I am, okay. Shall I tell you a story that Bull Bancroft once told on himself? Okay. Does the name Bull Bancroft mean anything to anybody?
Not to me.
Not to me.
Hello?
We're showing our age.
Hello?
So who was Bull Bancroft? I think we've lost him.
Oh, maybe. Can you hear us? Actually, I think it looks like the picture's frozen.
Yeah. Yep.
I'm kind of surprised that we haven't had a few more people joining.
Oh, they're coming.
Oh, I'm sure they will.
Many of them are already pretty used to Zoom.
Well, I have used Zoom a few times, but what happened, the reason I reached out to you was I clicked on it and it was just showing me and it wasn't saying anything about a meeting. In the past, if I've clicked onto some Zoom things, it says the meeting will start in such and such amount of time. And it didn't show any of that. So I was a little concerned that maybe, I had a problem with the link, but. You're in Jackson Hole, correct?
I am.
Yeah, beautiful area. I'm in Washington State, about 25 miles north of Portland, Oregon.
Uh-huh.
Pretty area. I was last in Jackson Hole, I guess, around 2012 or so, something about that time around then.
One of the things that really got started for me at Lakes was group singing. There was a lot of musicians there, 60, 61, 62.
Yeah.
And so in Jackson, we have a hootenanny, all acoustic hootenanny that began back in 1992.
Oh, nice.
And this year, we're doing it on Zoom. I think we've done 30 of them on Zoom so far or whatever. And if you go to Jackson Hole Hootenanny, they're all listed on Zoom.
Oh, nice. I Actually, I sing with a choral group out here. Well, right now we don't because of COVID, but we perform at all the senior living facilities around the county every week. So that's a lot of fun. And I play the guitar and the ukulele. And so there have been some things on Zoom with that as well.
That's great.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
My brother lives just south of the Seattle airport.
Ah.
And he, up until COVID, he did a lot of singing at old age homes.
Yeah, these are, well, I don't know the old age, but they're senior living facilities, independent. But yeah, it's a lot of fun to do that. I enjoy it. You know, but I remember going back, I mean, the Hootenanny days, gosh, you know, I had my guitar and that was all back in the late 50s, the 50s, the 60s.
Oh, yeah. Welcome, Brian.
Oh. Well, we have a few people joining.
Stan Cutter.
How did he get that background? I don't know how, I can't get that background on my computer.
It's an AMC, found it on an AMC website.
Oh, okay.
There's a way in Zoom to put a background there, just a JPEG picture of anything you want.
Yeah, there is. You go into settings and about halfway down, there's a place to add backgrounds. And there are 3 or 4 virtual backgrounds already added. So you can add what you want.
Oh, nice. I like your choice.
Peter, it's Brian.
Hi, Brian. How you doing?
Where's Peter?
I'm in the,
Hey, Peter, just before we get going, I'm a ward as well, 4 generations ago.
oh, wow.
Have you ever heard of Wardsville, Ontario?
No?
Well, there's a big reunion there about every 3 or 4 years of all the wards, at least Canadians. And those are my origins.
My family goes back to Portsmouth, New Hampshire and Salem.
Okay,
1800s.
beautiful.
And my middle name is Langdon, and he was governor of New Hampshire for a while. Welcome, Valerie.
You have to unmute yourself, Valerie.
Yeah,
if you want to
she's
talk.
muted.
Lower left.
At the bottom left, there'll be a thing to unmute.
If you move your cursor to the bottom left, you'll see mute, unmute.
I think you can also hold the space bar down to temporarily unmute.
Yep. There's a Zoom expert.
No, I'm not by any means an expert on it. I just read that. I think, in fact, I think it was in Peter's instructions.
Yeah, it works if you set it in the settings, and it's normally
Okay,
set
'cause
in
I
the
tried it
settings.
and it worked for me.
Okay. There we go, Valerie. Oh, you were just unmuted, Valerie.
Okay,
There you
Okay,
are.
There you go.
There you are.
Now we
All
hear
right.
you.
so I guess we're all a lot older.
Oh,
Day or
no,
two.
what makes you think that?
But
I
but
don't know.
the good
It's
news is that we're
number
vertical.
For that.
The good news is we're vertical.
Yep. I think it's good.
That must mean we're wiser, too.
Very, very much. Yeah. Now, I was never a member of the crew lakes, but I sure spent a lot of time up there. I loved it. It was great. The girls weren't allowed to be members of the crew back then.
Right. That's right. Only at Pinkham.
That's right. I was a salad girl. I remember Melvin and George, they used to just love the way I cleaned the floor. I thought, big whoop, that'll get me far.
Were you back as far as Tex when he was there?
As far as who?
Tex in the kitchen?
No,
Okay, I guess Tex,
I was there in 62. I was there for one winter too, in 61, 62, and then I stayed for the summer of 62. And then came back in 63 and then got married.
And in 62, she came up to lakes pretty frequently.
I sure did. I never thumbed so much up that auto road in all my life. Always got a ride. It's a lot of fun. Good memories. Good people.
yeah, got that right.
Yep. So I was sorry to hear about Ted Blatchford.
Yep.
Yeah. I really liked him. He was younger than me. He was a nice kid. He made Anna Dama bread one time. I'll never forget it. And nobody would eat it. Worked all day on it. It's nice. This thing's going to start in what, 8 o'clock, right?
10 minutes.
Depends on where you are.
Yeah, I'm on the West Coast, so for me, it's 10 till 5.
10 to 5.
What part of the West Coast?
It's 4:50 right now.
But where are you in the West Coast?
Oh, I'm in Washington State, about 25 miles north of Portland, Oregon.
Okay, all right. I have a son in San Francisco, a daughter in Rhode Island, and I live in Florida.
Oh, okay.
Very easy living here.
Well,
No-
good.
No coats.
Welcome, John Nutter.
Yeah, well, it's great to be here. Thanks so much for doing all this work. It's wonderful.
And welcome, Dick Meserve.
Hello. Hi, Val.
Come on.
Hi, Kim. This is fun.
It's good. Where's John?
Yeah, it's nice to see everybody. It's hard to recognize some people, but it's really nice to see everybody.
Welcome, Paul.
Hey there.
Hey, Paul.
Hey, John.
Good to see
Haven't
you.
seen you since our Lakes reunion.
That was the last time I was in the mountains. So
Yeah, last time I was there.
Yep.
I was there for the 75th year reunion, but I didn't make it to the 100th.
we had a great turnout. It was just a great crowd, a beautiful day. Really a lot of fun weekend. We did 2 in 1. We did NISPA 50 and Lakes 100.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, I took
Stan,
a
you have
bunch
a
of
great
pictures.
background there.
Yep.
I did get to hike one time in the Austrian Alps and stayed in their hut systems, and that was pretty neat. That was pretty nice. Took my 2 kids. It was great. Except for in the White Mountains, when you hike up one side and come down the other, you're where you want to be. In Austria, you hike up one mountain and down another, and there's another damn mountain in front of you, and you got to go up that one and down that one again, and then up and down, and finally you're there. It was great.
John Nutter, we thought you were going to marry Martha Child, but you never did.
No, I think there were a whole lot of husbands that wanted to do that. I've been in touch with her recently.
Martha Ash now. I grew up with Marcia and her sisters in Sudbury, so.
I went down to visit her and her husband in 1973. Spent a month in New Zealand with them. Joel Mumford was actually there at the same time. So I took
I haven't
a whole
done that.
bunch of pictures, and I was cleaning out some files and just last summer, and I found all these pictures. So I sent them off to Marty. She was really glad to have them. They were of our hiking time and mostly in the South Island.
Fantastic.
It's good to share pictures. I sent mine all off, and I think a couple of them showed up. There was one of Peter Ward with Susan Slade, a really good one. They were playing the banjo and the guitar.
Oh, do we have a contact for Susan Slade? I was trying to reach, I don't know where she is.
She's in, I think it's, she's in Montana. We still not get together, but we still talk and write cards at least once a year. And I sent all her paperwork to Peter Ward because he wondered where she was. I have her phone number and her address.
Oh,
So
I'll reach out to you later. I'd like to get that. I'd like to reach out to her.
sure. Isn't there going to be some list of all the names and addresses of all of us that we have?
Yeah, Peter, you'd put that out there, right?
What I put out so far is the OH list, which has the name and the email and the city or town. So I figured in terms of addresses, street addresses and stuff, we don't have that. Although
Right.
Val gave that to me for Sue.
I did, yeah.
So I can send you that.
Did you
Yeah,
call?
And the
I
other
get-
person I've been trying to, I'm sorry, the other person I've been trying to find was Ruthie Golan, who I worked with back in 55 and 6.
See, I wouldn't know her.
Yeah.
But, no,
Hey,
Thanks,
Jeff,
Valerie. I'll touch
Paul,
base with you.
seen you for a long time.
this is really neat, really good. I still try to get back home. We're famous for Ipswich clams, and you just can't beat them. They're the best. But I tell you, I love Florida. It's pretty good. It's been very good to me. No mountains.
Hey, Bob Cary, good to see you.
Pardon me?
I'm saying hi to Bob Cary. John
Hi, Bob
Hobbies.
Cary. Yeah, I know Bob. And, oh God, the name just ran away from
I
me.
think you're on mute.
I'm not on mute, am I?
Oh, Bob Cary, I think is.
Oh,
Yeah. And Roger Foster, I think
Can't
you're
hear you,
muted as
Valerie.
well.
So I guess I'm the sole member of the 58, 59 seasons at Lakes.
Is that Roger Foster down there in the, where it has Roger? You're muted, so I can't hear you.
I can hear you now. Hooray.
isn't this wonderful?
Bob Cary.
Yes.
I worked in the hills at the same time as your brother Skip. And when I saw photographs of you when you were younger, I just said, hey, I'd know that guy anywhere. He looks just like his brother.
Well, yeah, we
Nice
did.
to see you. You didn't have any beard in the photographs earlier.
Oh, this is my Corona 19 project.
Corona beard.
I just haven't shaved, but I don't have a beard. The hell with that. No. So.
Oh, this is John Hobby here.
Welcome,
Sorry?
John.
Hi, John.
John Hobby right there.
Hey, John, Ray Scheimer up here.
Okay.
Hi, John. I live in Falls Church and your brother called me to tell me about this event.
You, John.
Good for my
Hobby?
brother.
JH00931, is that John Hobby?
Right.
John, oh, nice to
Who's-
see you. What a
who's
lovely
speaking?
mustache you have. Yeah.
John, this is Brian up in
You were
the
a great
corner.
hutman in your day. I really enjoyed working with you.
Well, thanks.
I served with your brother in Korea in the Peace Corps and traveled with him in Southeast Asia. Brian
Who-
Kopp,
Who's that speaking?
upper left, Brian Kopp, C-O-P-P, Brian.
Okay.
I served in Peace Corps with Chuck in Korea, and we traveled through Southeast Asia together. So I knew about you, but he never served at Lakes, did he?
No, he was at the Madison.
He was at Madison, yeah.
Right. 10 years later.
Okay, with Tony.
Most everybody looks a hell of a lot younger than me.
Which one here is John Hobby?
Right up here.
Oh, lower there you are, okay.
Who said they lived in Falls Church?
Dick Meserve.
Oh, okay.
I live in Falls Church, and John's brother who worked at Madison in '62, was also lives in Falls Church, and called me to make sure I knew about this event.
Well,
I did already from Peter.
Which state are we talking about?
Virginia.
All right.
Virginia,
I
yeah.
live in Arlington. I'm right next door to you.
Oh, really?
I didn't know there were any old hubmen anywhere near me down here. We'll have to work on that.
Yeah, well, there are two of us in Falls Church.
Wow, I had no idea. That's great.
John, are you also brother to Moose Meserve?
That's my younger brother.
That's what I thought, yeah.
And my older brother worked at
Bill?
Madison.
Where's Bill Meserve?
Well, he just moved to Falmouth, Maine. He had been living in Winchester, Massachusetts, and they finally decided they'd go further north.
Ah,
Well,
he has a place up near Squam Lake, right?
Well, he's on the water, on the ocean.
It's in Maine.
Richard
Yeah,
Meserve, are you any relation to Moose Meserve?
That's my younger brother.
Your older brother?
My older brother was Bill Meserve, who worked at Madison. I have a younger brother who was at Mizpah, was, I think, the first hut master at Mizpah.
Right.
Jed
That was
Davis.
Willie Ashford.
Jed,
Thank
you're
you.
muted.
How
Jed,
do you spell nepotism?
there you go.
Alan
Hi, Alan, it's Doug.
Is Al Coop? I wouldn't recognize you, Al. You look a little different these days than the last time we interacted. It was probably 20 years ago.
It wasn't,
You
it
wouldn't
wasn't that long. You
recognize
stopped
me.
by my office
Jed.
20 years ago. You stopped by my office with a bunch of students complaining about their exams. I thought you were one of them the way you looked.
That's right. I was up visiting you at Dartmouth.
Yeah.
Alan Coop, I read your book and about the village in New Hampshire that took in the German prisoners of war. Marvelous book, marvelous story. I really like.
I stumbled upon a good story and had to write it down. But
You did it
OH
all,
were really
didn't you?
involved in it.
You organized it.
Well, I did something like that. Yeah. Mhm.
Yes, yeah. Extraordinary initiative. Good for you.
Where's Roger Foster? I don't see him on the screen.
I'm here.
Hi, Roger.
You're right in the middle, yeah.
What do I do to get it on the screen?
You're there.
You're there. You're right in the
Yeah.
middle.
Can anybody hear me by any chance?
Hey, Roger, it's
Roger.
Ray Scheimer up on the second from the right, second from the left at the top. It says
Well-
Maui.
Actually, the orientation on each of our screens can be different from
Yep.
each other.
Depending upon how wide you set your window, you're either 3 or 4 across or 5 across. So you got to count the numbers from your upper left to the lower right if you want to position yourself.
1, 2, 3.
Yeah, but they vary according to, for example, you are always shown in the upper left or near the upper left. And whoever speaks a lot will be shown up there. So it moves around.
I thought it was based on intelligence.
Yeah.
Or hair length.
We've got,
It'd be blank in that case.
we've got 25 people on so far and we're expecting 40. So just
Wow.
we'll
Hey.
keep chatting for a little bit.
Time to
Hey.
show up. They're
If
probably.
those who are identified by numbers only, could you put your
Yeah, right.
name in there so we
Hey,
know?
Al. Hey, Al Coop.
How you doing?
I'm doing good. It's Valerie.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
know. I recognize your voice anyway. I would
Okay.
recognize.
Hey, can anybody hear me? I don't know if I'm muted or not.
I hear
No,
you.
I can hear you.
That voice for it.
Okay.
No, you're fine.
Yep.
Roger Jr. Are you Roger Smith?
No, Roger Foster.
Oh, okay. I worked with Roger Smith in the summer of '52, if you can imagine going back that far. It
Well,
was almost 70 years ago, wasn't it? But he was a good guy and he was a good hotman.
Dog.
Worked hard. And we fell out years later because I ventured to defend John Cary and he ventured to defend, what's his name? Bush W. And he never forgave me for being a leftist. What could I do?
Well, I started in 1953.
Yeah.
I
Mine
was
was,
there in 52, but was there the previous years as a working through.
yeah, I started in 54, yeah, 54 at Pinkham, and then 55 and 6 at Lakes.
Yeah.
I was at Madison from 54 to 58, 57, excuse me.
I was 49 at Madison, 49 and 50 at Madison, 51, 2, 3 at Lakes. And I left in the middle of the summer of 53 to go to Korea. That was a very bad move.
That may have been why I got the job that year.
John Hobby, what have you been doing all your life?
Me?
Yes.
John Hobby. I've been here in Woods Hole as a ecosystem scientist, and so I got my PhD up in the Arctic and in Greenland.
For a while, you had an email address that had an edu in it. Were you teaching?
No, I don't think so.
No, you don't think so. I think you would have known if you were.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's right. I taught at North Carolina State for 10 years before moving to Woods Hole.
Right.
You never know you're teaching unless somebody's learning.
What did you teach?
I taught limnology, which is the study of lakes.
Marvelous, good for you. I'm just reading this brilliant book on what happened to the American Indians after Wounded Knee. It's written by a guy called David Troyer, and it's about how they pulled themselves together again after 1890 when they were all massacred. And it was supposed to be the end of it all. But they did very well at fighting the government and asserting their rights. And it's a fascinating story. I really, really am enjoying it. I don't know if anybody's interested in that kind of thing. What can I do? That's one moment. I taught the Middle Ages for years and years, and medieval Latin, medieval English, and my interest was spread so broadly that I didn't start to publish very much until after I retired. And I've been working in the history of medieval medicine, and I've been editing right now. I'm just finishing up an edition of a Latin poem from about 1570, and it's fairly long, and it's a good poem. It's interesting, and the Medium Avum monographs are going to publish it here in Oxford. I live in Oxford. I live overseas. That's why it's so late here. It's a little after 1 o'clock. I'm probably not going to last the course, but that's what I do in my retirement. I've studied and researched and write and all that stuff.
Maybe we should hear from David Abello about prostate problems, since it's a bunch of.
I was going to put a plug in because, half this group, except for Jeannie and Valerie, you guys probably all need to get your prostates examined, and I could probably strike a bargain between all you guys.
Yeah, not tonight.
David, say Da Vinci?
Yeah, no, that's all I do.
Yeah, well, that's what I had.
David, will you give us an OH discount?
It's free. You know,
You have
I
it,
won't
Joe.
even use a glove.
Peter, I think it's time for you to use the mute. Peter, use the
Yeah.
mute button if you have to, okay?
Well,
David, I must say you've got a great video. I saw it before my surgery.
No, you know, I tell you, I started doing robotics in 2002 when I was down at Duke. And, you know, it's just revolutionized surgery. And that's all I do now, prostate cancer and kidney cancer. So
David,
it's,
are you in the Boston? Are you in the Boston area now?
no, I'm in Syracuse.
Syracuse,
So,
okay.
I was in Chicago and then down at Duke, and it's been a great run. You know, and I learned it all in the huts. You know, they always told me if you could read, remember the cookbooks. If you could read Fanny, what is it,
Farmer.
Fanny Mae or Fanny Farmer or whatever. If you could read the cookbook, you can do robotic surgery too. It's not that.
David, I call it the bowling ball surgery for all the holes you put in my stomach.
Okay.
It's been great. So.
Okay, so we've now got 30 people on, and I think we'll move to the structured part a little bit so we can begin to reminisce about the huts. So ideally, first of all, you should see the hut on your screen. On the upper right, there's a place where you can choose whether you're looking at gallery or speaker view, and you can also say it's at side-by-side view. And that'll bring up the slide of the hut on the left side of the screen and the gallery of people on the right side. And you can put your cursor in between and move it back and forth. So you can make the slides bigger or the people bigger, depending on your personal interest.
Peter, I'm not sure you shared your screen yet. I don't see slides.
Yeah, I don't either.
I don't see.
You
I
gotta share
don't
your
want to play
screen.
with the screen for fear that I may stir it up and cause it to go crash. Who's ever there, they're there. Listen, Peter Ward has started.
I
screen-
got it.
Lakes.
All right.
Okay, I see it now.
How'd you do that?
Okay, so you see if you're on side by side view, click right in the upper right hand corner. You can be on side by side. Then you can move the boundary between the two back and forth, depending on whether you want to see people or see the slides, or how much you want to see them.
Got it.
Let's see the slideshow.
Okay. So I've got a few historic slides to start with, and then we'll get to Larry Eldredge, who comes to us all the way from England tonight.
That's me, yes.
This is a view of lakes that we all know well coming back. And many
Not
of us
only
have
do I-
seen this picture or seen the plaque of William B.
Yeah.
Curtis. And what's interesting that I just found out is that he's the father of American amateur athletics. He was in such fit shape and such a promoter of athletics. But anyway, it was his death at this spot. Ormsby died actually up on the summit. That led to the shelter being built back where you can see Lakes Hut, and then led to the development of lakes. And I think for most of us on the call, we're familiar with the 1950 photo, but Lakes was a small shadow of itself in 1915 and a lot bigger by 2005. The first crew picture we have is 1936, which includes Barbara Belcher and missing Liesl Booth. I've been unable to get a clarity as to how many women were in the huts, how much back in those early days. This is the 1941 crew at Lakes. And all of us are familiar with the plaque to Ted Fuller in the crew room at Lakes. And many of us are familiar with Willie's Rules, which were posted pretty much on the edge of the kitchen where you go into the crew room. And many of us didn't know who Willie was. Willie's shown here on the left of the
There's
1950 crew.
There's Chuck,
and
Chuck Rowan.
That's me there, for Christ's sake. Oh, I can't believe it. Jesus.
Here, the Ted Fuller plaque's out in the dining room now, no longer in the crew room.
Aha. Okay, so
John Hobby, where are you, John?
Right over here.
let's see, I meant to, Larry, did you want to, you were the oldest member of the crew.
What?
Larry, did you want to make any comments about those years?
You got something to say about those years, I want to say? Is that, I'm deaf as a post. I'm having trouble hearing you.
This is your chance to reminisce a little bit about those few years at Lakes.
Yes, I will. I tell you, when I was at Lakes, I had a wonderful, wonderful time. I met some great people. I worked with some great people. There was an occasional dud, both among the people I worked with and among the goofers who came through. But there are a lot of incredibly fine people on that, and they stick in my head. I'm afraid they're frozen in time. So, you know, people look the way they looked then. I wouldn't recognize anybody now, like you, John. You didn't have a mustache in our day. But I tell you what, I got most out of working there. Partly enjoyment of the mountains, but mostly it was Joe Dodge that influenced me. He was not a micromanager. He was a guy who said, here's your hut, go and run it, do your best. He came through usually once in the summer, leading a group of girls from a girls' camp called Camp Mudjekeewis.
And the Mudjekeewis.
Occasionally he would say something about the way you were running the hut, but mostly he just left you to do it. And I found that kind of challenge was really, really wonderful for me. It gave me a sense of accomplishment and a sense of confidence that I was not getting out of my university education at the time. And really, the huts was an incredibly important part of my early life. John, I see you there now in that picture. Yes, you look good. You didn't have any mustache. Okay, I'm done. Thank you very much, Peter.
I think, Larry, you hit the nail on the head very solidly. That's one of the most remarkable things about the hut system and about working at Lakes was our independence and simply the expectation that we were going to do really good.
One thing that puzzles me about the more modern lakes, there's only one crew bunk room. Does everybody sleep in the one crew bunk room, or is there a special bunk room for the women?
No, they all sleep together.
They all sleep together, but there's a crew of, the crew is almost 11 now, which includes the naturalists and the research people and all of them. And they sleep in other rooms with the goofers, or just they're all small bunk rooms.
That's equality for you. Is that Tad White behind you, John, in that picture?
I think so.
Yeah, I think you're right.
All right, I
Is that Tad or is
know
that Nick?
more than Larry, Andy Taylor up on the left, and then I'm down on the right. John
That's
Hobbies.
you down there on the right,
Okay.
on the lower right.
Right.
That's John.
Is that Tad White standing just behind you?
Up here, I think, in the top right.
I don't know.
Tad or Dick, one or the other.
No. Okay. I don't recognize anybody else. Oh, that's John.
This is
No,
a picture
Andy.
of our beer before the hurricane washed it down the Ammonoosuc. We were going to have an Italian day with 3 cases of beer, and that's gone.
That's a lot of litter.
Yeah.
That's L. Starkey.
They'll start with the pack.
Mm-hmm.
On
Yeah,
the back.
Tell me, Andy, did your
Yes.
knees give out on you after a while?
I was fortunate. My back and my knees held up okay. It was a wonderful summer there at 54. And I've been trying to locate John Hobby, but I'm spelling his name Hobby, and and it doesn't come up on Google or anywhere, but now I found him. And 1 year after this, I worked also at Evans, which is now defunct, as you all know. It was an experiment of Joe Dodge for about 8 years, and worked with Jim Hayner over there 2 years later in '56.
Yeah.
Is Lew Lloyd on yet?
I'm sorry?
Is Lew Lloyd on yet? I don't see him.
Oh, so that's Andy Taylor then. Hi, Andy.
Hi, up here. Yeah, it's not Antoinette, it's Andy.
And
My first time the lakes was 1942. Got there by a Craig camp and a couple of nights, Madison a couple of nights, and a spectacular clear day to cross the range. And my father had been friends with Joe Dodge from the 1920s and 1930s. And he began taking me up there every year until 1953, when we finished a few nights in the huts after spending the rest of the month in Maine and New Hampshire, hiking, climbing, paddling, etc. And every year when we would visit the huts, he would park me in the trading post and go talk to Joe Dodge. Finally, in 1953, he invited me to come along, and Joe immediately turned to me and began quizzing me. And within 20 minutes, I was signed on to fill a vacant lakes. So that's what got me started there. And Al Starkey was the one who began carrying the propane tanks down, the big ones. They're about 210 going down, about 110 going up on the backboard. And I didn't have Al's upper body. He played on the line for Penn State, but I had the legs and back to take him down. So I started doing that. And 56, I got the privilege of bringing the wall down. So, and I think they stopped bringing that size down after that. And,
Yeah, this is,
Ray on?
yes, I am. Showing it says Maui up there. Yeah, the slide on the left actually was a gooferless slide. I guess doesn't ever happen in the lakes these days. But I started going up there as a camp kid when I was about 9 or 10 and wanted to work, and I applied a couple times and didn't get in. And then I went to Pinkham and I asked where Joe Dodge was, and they said it was having dinner. So I went and knocked on his door, and I said, "Hey, my name is Ray Scheimer, and I've applied here before, and I've got turned down, and God damn it, I want to work here." And he said, "You're hired." And that was how I ended up getting in there. And worked at Pinkham for that year, but then up in the lakes in 55 and 56. One of the things that I remember, and I don't remember if it's 55 or 56, but we had a hurricane that came over, and the eye of the hurricane came right over lakes or the mountain. And I know we went outside, it was in the evening, we went outside, you could see all the stars, and it was just dead quiet. And then of course, all the turmoil around it. And then as it passed on through, I think they clocked the winds at 135 up on the summit. And I remember, I don't know who was with me, but we had the generator going, and I, along with somebody, tied ourselves to the hut somehow, I don't remember how, and crawled out to get that generator door open and get the generator shut off. So that's kind of a memorable night for me. But greatest summers of my life, greatest summers of my life.
Wow.
Is Bob Cary on? This is the Lakes crew in 19.
The only adventure I had was like that. Was one day in was in August, and we had a snowstorm, and a woman came into the hut. I would say, from my point of view now, relatively young, but then I thought she was old. And she said that her friend had collapsed out on Boot Spur and was dying out there, and her husband wouldn't leave her. So we grabbed a stretcher and we went out onto Boot Spur. She was just at the top of Boot Spur where the tree line gives out, and we carried her back in the stretcher in the snowstorm. And I had gloves on, but the cold got from the aluminum in the stretcher just went right through my gloves. And I could feel my hand undoing as I walked along. And we had to keep changing sides so that you could have a different hand going.
Here's the 58 crew. It's Greg Prentice on the top left, and Bill Belcher, and Don Springer on the right, and lower left is Chuck Kellogg. I'm in the middle, and Jim Hayner on the right. And we had a grand year. I think that was the last time there was a Goofless night at Lakes. Here we had a capacity of 110, and nobody showed up on an absolutely gorgeous day. Just one of those things. Of course, we only had reservations for camp groups at that time, and we were prepared for a pretty good crowd because of the weather. And Joe made his last trip to Lakes to fix something. I don't know what it was, but he had a few expletives to usher while he was working.
He always did.
And this was, as far as I know, this was Joe's last trip to the hut. This was midday, and sometime in July. So that was a nice time to be there with him. And this was a tragedy that happened on July 19th. The Lakes crew helped carry the bodies to the summit, and it was very eerie to sit there with them, and they were gone. Hypothermia. Too bad. It was tough.
There they are.
Let's see. I certainly had a wonderful time. My brother Skip worked at the huts before I did, and I began in 1954 Madison and worked 4 years there, and then moved to Lakes. And what a wonderful experience. Met a lot of nice people.
Bob, do you remember the raids going back from the Lakes to Madison in '54?
Raids? Oh, we never did any raids.
You're right.
You got the bacon dinger.
I remember hauling the green chair from Lakes to Madison one night, and that was I don't know. That was a stupid experience, but anyway, we made it over.
That green chair went back and forth a couple of times.
No problems, but so it was a great time. And we did have Justice William O. Douglas as a guest that summer, and in 1959, he came through, and then he wrote his article in the National Geographic, and the huts of history since then.
Oh, one night in 1951, the Madison crew, under your brother's direction, Bob, under Skip's direction, the Madison gang came over and stole the Lakes green chair and trotted it back over to Madison. Well, we couldn't have that happen. So Willie Hastings we heard that they had it chained to the wall so that you couldn't pick it up and walk off. So Willie Hastings went down and got a pair of bolt cutters, and he came up the alleyway, and several of us went across the range, and we met at the top of by the brook, Snyder Brook head there, and we snuck in. The crew woke up. I don't know. I think they had the booby trap set up so that we couldn't enter quietly. And we went in and tried to cut the chain quickly and get the hell going. And no, they weren't going to have that. And I thought we were going to have a real set to there in the floor, but Cooler heads prevailed, and we went back across the range without the chair. Joe wrote to the people up in Madison. They said, "You take back that goddamn chair, and fast." And so we got our chair back. Valerie, how was it like for you there?
Well, I wasn't really part of the crew, but I spent an awful lot of time up there and made a lot of friends. And I'm probably one of the few people that swam in one of the lakes at Lakes of the Cloud. It was pretty cold. And just a few minutes ago, I saw Paul Buffum.
I'm here.
Hi. I don't know if you remember me, but I was up there a lot.
I remember.
One time, because I used to go up on the weekends. This was the summer after I had worked there, and I used to just go up on the weekends, and I used to sleep upstairs in the attic. And one morning I wake up and there's one of the cats holding a dead mouse for me. I slept. But I used to look, and I never felt so wanted as by that crew. There was Peter Ward, Al Coop, Dave Robb, Ted Blatchford, Lane Emerson, and if I forgot somebody, I'm really sorry, but it was wonderful.
Okay,
And,
my audio got muted, and so I got it back now. But anyway, we get back on, because we're going to get to some of what you're talking about, Val.
all right, I just want to say how wonderful it was. I'm so happy I did this.
So we were cooking dinner one night, and everybody was sitting down and drinking and whatever, and a goofer came in holding a milk pitcher and said, "What's this stuff in the milk?" Well, it turned out that the cats had been climbing down under the piano up inside to the milk booth and using it as a cat litter box.
Oh my God.
Oh, shit.
So it was in 1960 that William O. Douglas came through. And this is a picture of the governor of New Hampshire and of the justice and of George Hamilton. My biggest memory when I met the justice was that he was traveling with the Forest Service, and they had an Indian pump full of booze. Now, when I shook his hand, I thought I could push him over if I really wanted to. So ever since 1960, being sober as a judge has had very special meaning for me. But these are a couple of the pictures from the National Geographic, Billy Belcher and Chuck Kellogg and myself.
George guided the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court up through King Ravine, which is it's a hell of a climb through King Ravine. They both got up to Madison in fine shape.
So for me, one of the big deals at the Huts was singing several nights a week. And in 1960, I hadn't learned guitar yet. This is a picture from the National Geographic. This is a picture from just sitting around in the kitchen. But I immediately bought a guitar and learned to play. And for the next couple of years at Lakes, we had music several nights a week. And that's been very important in my life ever since.
Lots of music there, lots of singing. When the goofers would be drying the dishes, we'd be singing with the goofers. It was wonderful.
Yeah, Al Starkey brought his guitar and played, and we did a lot of singing back then too.
So here's Al Coop.
We didn't have much of a bathroom there, did they, for showers? But if you chose the right
Talk about
moment.
cheesecake.
I remember doing that a few times when the lake was too cold.
And I'll just in a second, the Huts were all for music for me, and I'm sorry Pete rushed by that picture of the 61 crew. The one thing that, first of all, when I got there, that I noticed that you can tell the difference in physique. George was into hiring football players, all of whom wanted to pack their over 200-pound weight down to the Hut the first week. And I was glad when I finally worked my way up to my 140 pounds. But what really impressed them, there's no doubt that the guys that I work with in the Huts did more for my education than 4 years in college. I learned so much from them about music and everything, and got 2 college roommates out of my crews. So, we all know it was sort of the catalytic experience of our young lives. And here's Frank Dean and myself just having a time playing on the Burning Pit Rock. Great memories, and thankfully I live close enough so that I get back to lakes several times a summer.
Great.
Oh, nice.
Well, this is the crew I was on in 1962, and I'm sort of an accidental member of this crew, in fact. I'd been hired by George Hamilton to be a floater at the Lonesome and Galehead to fill in for crew members who were off on days off. And an opening developed at Lakes because Lane Emerson, who was supposed to be the hut master, couldn't return, and Peter Ward was promoted. So that left a vacancy on the crew, and I was fortunate enough to slide over and fill that slot. And I was really very lucky. We had a really compatible crew, as is reflected by the fact that 5 of the 7 of us are on this call, plus Val, who's an honorary crew member.
Got him.
I have many fond memories of that time, packing heavy loads, although I must admit I didn't pack quite as heavily as some of my fellow crew members. Cooking for 100 when I hadn't ever really cooked before. Hijinks and pranks, some rescues. Fortunately, we didn't have any fatalities. We had a raid on Madison. Guinea night at a time when you could use that word. Hanging out at the Obs, ice cream at the summit. I remember one night we had about 20 unexpected campers for dinner, and I was the cook that night, and we didn't have enough desserts. I slapped frosting on a bowl of leftover oatmeal from breakfast, served it as cake, and the campers all loved it. This was a great dessert for them. So I wonder what they were eating at the camp. In any event, I have many fond memories of that summer that really stayed with me through the years. I also learned some important lessons. I know there is only one right way to fold a blanket.
You still fold it that way?
Still fold it that way. I've had to train my wife.
Okay. I don't know if I'm supposed to talk here, but this was a lobster dinner with all the fixings for the crew and friends after feeding the gophers. I don't know what we served the gophers that night, but I don't remember if I was the initial one who got this together, but I know that I did one time up at the summit, and we brought lobsters and steamers for them, but that was quite a few years after this. But I hope everybody enjoyed this dinner, and it was a lot of fun, and the gophers didn't get to eat it. We did. And it's just, I don't know, this is, Peter Ward, thank you so much for doing this. This is just so much fun. And I thank you again. And hi, Paul.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm
Remember
looking at this. Oh,
we went up to Lane's house on Lake Sunapee. Do you remember that? You were there.
I remember Lane's house there.
Yeah, I was there, and I had my daughter was there by that time, and Lane and my husband Ludwig. You remember Ludwig?
Yeah, right.
Yeah, Diesel. Yeah, he's gone, but that's okay. I have another husband. He's great. So anyway, life goes on, right?
Right.
All right, let's get back to this show. It's just too good. We're ready.
Okay, yeah, this one here is a reenactment of one of the more flagrant violations of Willie's rule number 15, which is don't be raunchy in front of the gophers. And what happened in 1962, it was a great crew, and but we had a flatulence situation there where I think it was Ward's cooking, but I don't know whether it was the altitude or whatever. But anyway, what we started to do was holding out a finger, and then somebody would pull it and would let fly. And this was all done, you know, in a crew room and you know, not in front of the goofers and, you know, very, you know, proper. Joe Dodge would approved. And what happened this one night is, you know, it was, you know, before dinner and, you know, it was a quiet time in the hut. And the goofers were all there reading flower books and stuff like that. And, you know, it was in the goofer room. And all of a sudden, Frank Dean comes out and he points his finger at me. And of course, I pulled it. And right behind him, this was a setup job. Al Coop had this trumpet, and he knew how to make a D flat noise that sounded like the loudest fart ever. And I mean, I guess I was just flabbergasted because it was right in front of the goofers, and I thought it was a real fart. And of course, the rest of the crew was back in there, and they were all laughing, and it was that scene there is a reenactment of the finger pulling incident. And then this one here is looks like the word came up from Pinkham that we were going to paint the goofer room, and I think the color, according to Al Coop, was pistachio green. And anyway, they must have got a deal on the paint, and they said, and you know, it was after a day of packing or whatever, and we really didn't want to do this, but we got started, and well, the paint started flying. and then we were all juvenile, so we have to give the middle finger salute there. But anyway, that was it. It was a terrific summer. I really had fun.
One of the things we had to do in '62 was bring in 2 new stoves. And when all the pieces that you could move out of the stoves were taken out, they were over 220 pounds. And we tried many, many ways to try to balance one on a pack board, but you just couldn't do it. So we ended up bringing them in with essentially with 2x4s through the edge there. And while the Crawford path is a pretty wide trail, it's not wide enough for a carriage chair of that type. So we ended up, for a lot of the lower part of the trail, going up higher on the ridge where there was more dirt and smaller rocks. But anyway, we had to do 2 trips that way to get those stoves in. So Stan?
Oh. Well, this is one of my crews, my first crew. Great summer. And Val Broadhead, John Nutter, Kenny Olson, Bed Davis, David Lewis, and Rocky Morrow. It was a fairly tame crew. We did have a good time. I do remember a New Year's celebration that we had toward the end of the summer. But other than the Mudgies coming through and sort of normal things, it was a very, very busy summer. We were almost always full. Friday nights tended to be the quietest, as were Sunday nights. But in between, it was just almost always a full house. So, and a lot of that was due to the National Geographic's article. Jed and Kenny can talk about these pictures. Looks like they were different season, but it was a fairly
a lot of the time I can't remember. Story. Somebody referred to this. I had never heard of the White Mountains, never heard of the Huts, never seen the White Mountains. But my family and the Robs had houses near each other in Pennsylvania in the Poconos. And the fall of '63, David was sitting up with me and said, "What'd you do last summer?" And I said, "I worked at a scout camp." And he said, "Boy, you'd really like to work in the mountains." And he wrote a recommendation to George. And somebody said, you know, George liked big guys, and Dave was a big guy. So he figured if David recommended me, I was a big guy. So I just got the job at Lakes and showed up not being that big a guy. And spent the next 4 summers there.
Yep. Following summer crew, Doug Hoskins came, as did John Glass. The other folks have been around the Hut system for a while. Doug was one of my fraternity brothers from college who found his way into the system. A good summer. lots of things to remember, mostly that we were very independent, as people pointed out very early on. George Hamilton would come through, but had a dog that was always, a quarter mile ahead of him. So if you saw the dog coming in the back of the hut, you got your act together by the time he was there, and could clean up enough that you didn't get into any trouble.
I have one, this is Doug. I have one anecdote to tell about Judd Davis. And I think this is probably the only time that anybody ever tried to foist bread pudding on the Gophers for dessert. And we had some, I think some of our bread that we used for trail lunches going bad. So Judd decided to make it into bread pudding, and it went out in the little doggy dishes and to 100 and some guests. Well, I think 98 of the dishes came back still full into the goat, which we of course had to take out to the gaboon to dump in those days. And before we did it, we decided to teach Jed a lesson by burying him head first in the goat with the bread pudding. I still to this day, I remember him coming up out of the bread pudding with it in his ears, eyes, mouth, and every orifice possible. But we never had bread pudding after that.
Phil Costello picked me up and headed me into it.
Right, you deserved it. We also had a special opening of a new gaboon that year. Right. That we had dug in the crumb holes. We didn't pay much attention to environmental issues. So here we are cutting down what was hundreds of year old crumb holes to dig a gaboon. Whoops. And then we had announced to the guests that we were going to have the official opening. So we had a ribbon cutting ceremony, and David came out all dressed up as in clerical robes to properly bless the new gaboon with holy water. And the Gophers poured out and came out and took all kinds of photographs. It was really fun. Great crew.
Listen, guys, I don't like to interrupt, but I've got it's 1:45 in the morning here, and I've got an appointment tomorrow morning at 9:45, and I'm going to leave the gang now. Much as I'm enjoying it, I'm sorry to have to go, but I must keep this appointment tomorrow, and I get to get a little sleep tonight. So thank you all for all your reminiscences. Absolutely wonderful. And see you again sometime. Cheers.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Larry.
Good night.
Here.
All the best.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Aw.
Well, when I look at this picture of 1966, I remember, of course, that was the year Bruce Sloat took over running the huts from George. And that was quite a different management regime. He was quite a different person. And one anecdote, he was concerned about the state's regulations regarding hygiene in our kitchen. And one of the things he was concerned about was long hair. A lot of long hair in 1966. But anyway, one of our crew, the gentleman standing behind Jed and me, is Niels Bendixson, a Swede, needless to say, with just wonderful blonde hair. He was just a typical Swede with long blonde hair and quite proud of it. And George pulled me aside, and I mean, not George, Bruce pulled me aside and he said, he's got to get a haircut. And I knew that was going to be an unpopular thing to do, but I got it together and I got Niels down to a barbershop in Gorham, and he got his hair cut as I was ordered to do. And when he came out of the barbershop with tears in his eyes, I said, Niels, what's wrong? He says, I've never had my hair cut before except by my mother. So anyway, that to me sums up the new regime that took over in 1966. Jed, this is your picture, I think, isn't it?
Well, that was summer '66, swimming on an iceberg.
Yeah, we used to swim fairly, not regularly, but I remember swimming in that lake a number of times.
And it
I
was,
went in a couple of times, but not many.
oh, we went on all the time.
Yeah, it was not. We built a sauna over there. We took an old barrel and actually had a sauna one summer. Do you remember that?
Yeah. And Marge Collins' brother was doing research on the lakes there and other lakes in the Whites, and he found that there was absolutely nothing living in the lower lake because of soap.
Right, I remember that. There were a couple of endemic fish in the upper lake with the water supply, which we couldn't swim in for that reason. But I remember the lower lake was biologically dead because we'd all use soap so often.
We celebrated the 50th anniversary of Lakes in '66. And our whole crew came back, and that's John behind Red Mac.
That was one of the proudest moments of that summer, was meeting the first Hutman, first Hut master, Red Mac McGregor. And then I had the pleasure and honor of serving as chair of the 100th 50 years later. That's a great connection to know Red Mac and go back 100 years. I'm very proud of that.
I didn't have any old pictures, so I just gave some current ones. So I didn't look like this then, but you saw in the picture before with the crew, and I was holding a little kitty cat we had. It was a great summer. A lot of good guys. I really enjoyed it.
You look like an escapee on a tax basis.
Is John Glaze on?
Don't think so.
Brian.
Hi there, Brian Kopp. This is, Peter told me this is 69, or 60, yeah, but I remember the winter after I spent the summer of 67 up there, some of us met in Pinkham and hiked up, or went over and drove over, hiked up the Ammy with later on near the top with crampons and ice axes. And I said, this is not for me ever again. But that's what it looked like. I must say, I got the job at Lakes in 67 because two guys got fired. I think it was for marijuana, I'm not sure. But I came up a week after it. Jed, you can relate this because you were hut master. I got up there, and 2 days after I got up there, I and a bunch of us had to go down to Littleton to take lie detector tests because some money had gone missing. And I don't know, Jed, if they ever found out who did it, or whether it's the two guys who were smoking weed who got cashed. I don't know.
It was them.
It was them.
First robbery in the Lakes. I think it was the first robbery in the huts. Woke up one morning, the crew report was gone, all the money.
So I was very lucky to get a job at all. I'd hiked in the Whites, but never, and always envied being a hutman. Two other memories. My twin brother couldn't be a hutman because he was in ROTC summer camp, but he came up for Guinea night. We still had Guinea night, and I guess he had too much to drink, and he slipped in the men's room and broke his wrist on that 12-foot urinal that's in there. I don't know if it's still there or not, but he hiked down the next day. When I got up there, I had a pair of boots that I got in Austria a couple of 10 years before, which I thought were really cool boots. And after 3-4 days of wearing those boots, my toenails were black, and I had to walk back down. And Bruce took me down to Interville to Limmer's. And Limmer had a pair of boots that he'd had for a year that someone hadn't picked up, so they gave them to me for $75. So I had my Limmers, and shortly before we moved out here to Washington State, I found them as I was packing stuff up, and I hadn't worn them in 35, 40 years. So I called up Limmers and I said, hey, maybe you guys have a museum. You'd like a pair of Limmer boots that I got in 67. And I told him a story about it. And he said, well, no, we don't have a museum, but why don't you send them to me and I'll see what I can do with them. So I sent them to him and then forgot all about it. And what he did, he put them on consignment. I paid $70 for them when I got them when Bruce took me down there. And 2 months or 6-8 months after I sent the boots and forgot all about it, I got a check for $95. So they had put them back in shape and sold them to some sucker. The final thing I want to remember, and Jed maybe knows about this or whether he ever got in trouble for doing it, but a week or two before we closed and left the place, we had an egg fight with 12 dozen eggs. It was all outside. It was all outside, but we demolished 12 dozen eggs, the 7 of us in an egg fight. And then I did the fall in 6 weeks in the fall at Mizpah the next summer or the next fall. And then I went and I was best man for John Glaze at his wedding in Vermont. And then I hopped in my car and Monday morning I was in Hilo, Hawaii for my Peace Corps training. And one of my fellow trainees was Chuck Hobby, who's John's younger brother. And Chuck saw me wearing an MMVSP t-shirt and came up to me and said, "Where the hell did you get that shirt?" And I said, "I'm MMVSP number 100. He said, "Well, great, I'm number 69. And we were great friends and we've been friends all those years. Jed, take over.
No, I'm done.
So this is a fairly incomplete picture of the crew from 1968. Brian Fowler and Chris Nesbitt are missing. There may have been more people missing. I'm sort of forgetting now exactly who all was the crew. I started in the huts at Madison in 66 with Joel Mumford, and then was assistant hut master in 67, and then moved to Lakes with the expectation that I was going to be the assistant hut master at Lakes. And I think I remember this right, but I think Willie was supposed to have been the hut master. I don't know, John, maybe you could remember what the sequence of events was, but whoever was supposed to be the hut master that summer didn't show up. And so on probably 2 days notice from my arrival as an assistant hut master, I was made the hut master. And that was quite an experience for me. I don't know if any of you have read the Spring Resuscitator, where I sort of talked about my career in the huts and what my experience in the huts meant to me in terms of learning responsibility, essentially. That was what I think was the big takeaway for me, was learning responsibility in all respects of the word. We do have we're talking about a number of episodes that we remember from various things. I do remember the changeover that Bruce Sloat brought. And you can help me, John, remember the name of the military guy who had been in the Arctic, in the Antarctic, who took over. What was his nickname?
The commander.
Commander
Marvel.
Marvel, right. He was something else. But one of the things that I remember he introduced us to the Navy cookbook.
Yeah, I remember that.
Which was this wooden filing book with recipes in there. Every recipe was quantified for 100 people. So it was really useful at Lakes of the Clouds because you would just do the recipe, or you would do half the recipe or something like that. You didn't have to do the difficult calculations that if you were taking something out of Fannie Farmer, for example, to ramp it up.
I have a personal relationship to your crew, Paul, because 2 summers later, Bruce Sloat fired Chris Nesbitt and my sister, who was they've been married now for 50 years and have 2 married children and 2 grandchildren. But my sister and Chris Nesbitt, who was on your crew, got fired in the summer of 70 for Chris swimming in the pool out at Pinkham in the Ellis River without any clothes on, and my sister sitting fully clothed on the bank. That was not considered proper behavior, and he got rid of both of them. But
well, it's a good thing.
I talked to Chris and see Chris with some regularity because he's a member of the family now.
Yeah, okay, that's good. So this is the list of our crew from 1968. I see Jeff Like is on here. I'm sorry that in the years that it's been folded up in my basement, one side has leaked onto the other side. But this lists us all. And I'd be happy if there is some place that would be appropriate to have this in Pinkham. I'm happy to send it out because it makes no sense sitting in my basement somewhere. So I'm happy to take suggestions as to where this really should go.
Well, Paul, I don't know if you remember, but
on the phone call, on the Zoom.
one of the challenging things about that year and the next year when I was also at Lakes was that the construction for the new dining room was ongoing both years. So in addition to the 100 people a night and the 9 or 10 people on the crew, there was a pretty substantial construction crew there both years.
Right.
And they were the social life in the crew was great, and the CC added to it, and the artisans that came down, Carl Blanchard and George Winslow, Tom Dione, Tony Bukovich. So it was quite a community there, and interesting year, and meant a lot to me.
Well, I can remember my year, Sid Hazley was working on the crew, and he was doing his damnedest to set the weight record for every hut that he visited.
Yeah.
He had brought in 300, right?
Yes, he said he did. Yep. It was.
The urinal was, I think, the heaviest thing brought down in 2 days. It was over 320.
That's right. I heard that the urinal was the heaviest thing that came in.
Right, that's what I said, yeah.
Yeah.
Next.
Well, I'll speak a little bit to this, I guess. The year after Paul was there, Doug Dodd was the hut master, and Garth Quillia had come over from Madison, I think. And again, it was a crazy year with the CC around. The culture was changing. Interesting year, but everyone, it seemed to me now that everyone we met was there for the same reason. They loved the mountains, and it was a great collection of people. And the work was hard, but it never seemed to be oppressive.
Jack, it looks like you're talking, but you're muted.
Uh-oh.
Lower left corner of your screen. There we go.
Can anybody hear?
Yes.
Let me chime in. I'm not in this picture. This is Tim Traver speaking. This is the year before my first year at Lakes in '71. But if you go back, I don't know, you can tell the hut's culture's in transition. A lot of things change in the '70s. A lot of good things begin to happen in the area of education, environmental education. New regulations, the wilderness areas are coming on board in '73. Whole different relationship with the Ken Olson becomes Hut's manager.
Oh.
And John Nutter, in charge of environmental ed in the huts. A lot of good things start happening. That's me in the upper left there. This is '73. Linda Switzer, or Avon Switzer, I'd say not one of the first women in the huts, but one of the first women in the modern day hut system. But back in '71, I think maybe that was around the last year we packed down the entire initial. So a lot of things were changing. The crews were getting a little bigger. It's still a small crew, though. A lot of great times, great people. There's David Albala.
No, I
head
remember-
proctologist. He did not practice on any of the crew, by the way.
I remember
Maybe he practiced on Dave Cleveland a little bit.
the Hudson is a kind of a place that brings people together. It's interesting. Tim and I grew up in the same hometown.
We did.
And
Yes.
we never met each other until we got to the Huts. But I remember, you know, when I was a rookie that year, you know, I was at Pinkham and they said, "Oh, just hike up to Lakes," you know, and I, as a kid, I'd done a lot of hiking through the Whites and stuff, and went up to the head wall, and you know, at Tuck, I had lunch, and then you know, started up the head wall, and all of a sudden the clouds come in, and all of a sudden I'm off the trail and lost, and I'm thinking, rookie dies, and you know, on top of Mount Washington, you know, and barely got into the hut, but Bruce James was actually a pretty amazing guy. He was you know, went to Williams, and Tim was great, and this was a really interesting crew. I mean,
It was a fantastic crew, really. Honestly, all those summers were just really fantastic.
I mean, Dave Cleveland was our musician, and
But I wanted to add that I didn't realize music had been so important to this sort of old hut system, but it certainly is cool to hear that. And music was a nightly affair in our hut. You know, we had a lot of singing, a lot of Avon Switzer knew a lot of show tunes, and she and Dave would walk up to the summit, you know, singing, you know, through the show tune thing. It was just great. A very happy crew.
it's nice to see that I had hair back then.
Hey, look at this.
A girl. Hey.
I recognize a few people
Hi,
here.
Jean.
So this is nicely labeled.
Yeah, there we go. Hey, Jack, are you on the call? This is Paul.
Jack's here.
I'm
Okay,
yeah, I'm
are
on
you-
the
are you
call,
gonna-
Paul.
Are we gonna do a rendition of Fairy Princess?
No, you could go solo on that one if you mind.
So this is I'm Paul Bogosian. I was the hut master in 1974. In fact, Ken Olson hired me, and I think I was the first person that he hired as the new Huts manager. I had just turned 15, so I was arguably too young to work in the huts. But he hired me anyway, and I told him in the interview that I wanted to be the hut master at Lakes. And lo and behold, 4 years later, at the age of 18 and a half, I was the hut master at Lakes. So this was a great crew. And there are 3 of us on the call: Gene Farquhar, Jack Tracy, and myself. I don't know if there's anybody else from our vintage. Rounded out by Gary James and Joe Gill and Sam Osborne. And it was a very lively summer, a great crew. We were like the raiding kings. So we actually raided Madison and Greenleaf in the same night.
Oh my God.
So, and of course we weren't worth very much the next day.
Especially Jack.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but we did rule. There's no question. I mean,
Oh
even
my
had our
gosh,
own
we had
stamp.
so many raid items. We had the propeller, we had the periscope, we had the grandfather clock, we had the Mispah chair, we had the Greenleaf chair, we had the, I can't remember
Everything.
what else. Yeah.
You cleaned the table.
Anyway, we raided Madison twice that summer, and one of them I was on, and it was a daytime raid. And we had inside information that the whole crew, except for Linda Switzer, was going to be in the valley.
Yep.
And so 2 of us decided, well, we're just going to go while all the crew's in the valley and raid Mispah. And we rolled, 2 of us roll into, in Madison, and we roll into the hut, and just as Linda is pulling out these charred loaves of bread, she opens the oven door and just the billows of smoke just filled the kitchen, you know. So we helped her to fan the smoke out the window, took our raid items and set on our way. Well, come to find out that she told the rest of the crew when they came back to the hut that we had tied her up, and that's why she burned the bread. Anyway, she'll probably deny this, but there are two witnesses on our side to her one. So
That's funny.
yeah. Jack, do you have any particular reminiscence from this summer? I have a bad knee to brag for the summer.
Oh,
and
I
think you
totally do.
too.
And you're probably responsible for it, Paul.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
I was the rookie on the crew. I didn't really know what I was getting into, although I had an inkling. My very first day when I arrived at Pinkham for orientation, which is quite funny, that term at that point. I was told that I would be packing into Lakes that day with Tim Traver and Fred Walsh, it turned out, and that we were going to learn how to pack. I thought that was okay, cool. That sounds great. It was one of the classic, Lakes days. You end up at the pack house, it's raining, the rocks are all wet. Tim taught me how to tie a load on. We were packing in blankets, I think, at that point. I got the diamond knot down, thought, oh, I got this thing down. We stepped off the cone. Fred went to the diving board second behind Tim. A big gust of wind came up and Fred took a header off the diving board. Proper technique, drop the load, everything good. Fred's alive, all things are good. And I was laughing so hard that when I stepped on the diving board, I did the exact same thing. Gave them all the other chance to laugh at me. So that was my introduction. We had a really strong crew, which probably explains why we did so much raiding. We had a lot of strong Nordic skiers. We had Gene on the team. My orientation by Paul consisted of being handed a Fanny Farmer cookbook and told that night that I was going to have ready at 5 o'clock a turkey dinner for 90 people, and that there would be 25 loaves of bread and potatoes and veggies, and the soup was going to come out first. And I thought, wow, okay, really? That's me? Thank God I'd learned to read by that point in my life. We packed more than I've ever packed in the huts, and I was a heavy packer. We packed twice a day on the way down. I think we were the last no-fly-in hut, Tim. The 75, I think got flown in, as I recall. We didn't get flown in. We packed all the initial in. We packed all the initial in through middle of August, and then we realized we had so much. We started packing it back out along with the empty bombs. I was in fantastic rowing shape when I got back to school that fall. So I owe a lot to Paul for that. Probably owe Paul and Fred for my career, in fact. Yeah, it was just a really incredible summer. It's the best job I ever had. As I recall, I think I got paid $38 a week in room and board or something. And the first two paychecks went to buy my limmers. So
I started at $10 a week back in '54.
Yeah, so in 19...
There's inflation.
I just had two more comments about the summer of '74, if I have a minute. So that picture, the picture of me I'm holding flowers because that was my 21st birthday, and my parents had hiked up and my cousin, and they brought me these flowers. So I was very happy. But I think I was also cooking that day because it's Bastille Day, July 14th. And I made 120 chocolate eclairs. Never made another eclair in my life since. And the other anecdote I wanted to share is that thank you, class of '64, for reminding us about the gaboon, because we in 1974 spent the preseason excavating that gaboon and emptying the contents. I don't know how we got rid of the contents, but we had to pry the thing out of the ground and it came out with this big like, and I think that might have been flown out, that big hunk of metal. But that again was part of, I guess now, new environmental regulations, and it was a good thing.
Those were the tanks that were put in 1967, I think.
Okay.
They were the tanks you could see from the dining room.
Right.
Yeah.
Right down towards the AMI.
Yes.
And we made a deal with the hut manager, who at that point was Joel White. And we said, if we clean it out, will you fly it out? Because it was just an eyesore. You know, it was the first thing you looked at when you looked out the dining room.
They were already there in 67, so they might have gone in 66.
Might have been 66.
So this is the 75 crew, and this is Tim Traver again. And we had a wonderful crew. That I think, Dave, you're on this call, right? And I know anybody else? Bill? That's Dave Gustafson up there, top left. I'm not sure. Then Bill Blay, Dave Hall, Joan Chevalier, another AMC person I don't know, and Joe Barabee. And the older gentleman down in the low part of the picture is Brad Swan.
Oh, yeah.
Wow. Brad was a
Thank you.
frequent visitor, and just a lot of fun to have him come in. Al Folger stopped by often. This is 1975. Dave, you want to add anything?
No, just to draw attention to my hair. Thank you.
Your hair. Yeah.
You know, it's Bill Blay. The upper left is Dave Gustafson, then Tamar Jackson, who was sort of an honorary member. She was Joe Barabee's girlfriend. She passed away a couple years ago. Then me, Dave, Joan Chevalier. Then I think her name was it Joan? She was the naturalist. And then the woman that's sitting next to Timmy was Brad's girlfriend. Brad was a real Renaissance man. He was the Providence Journal arts writer who joined us that summer a couple of times, and he also is no longer with us. But that was an awesome picture. That was a great crew. That was my first summer in the huts. Oh, here's an awesome picture. This is actually in the back. It's Dave Hall. This is actually at the Highland Center. In the back, it's Dave Hall. In the front, it's me packing down to Lakes that summer. This was taken by Timmy. Help me out with that photographer.
No.
He's a famous photographer who came up and
English guy.
Yeah.
Guy Shorey?
It was Colin something.
But you know, he took a bunch of pictures of us that summer. That black and white thing on top of Dave's pack board was his regular pack wear.
Mm-hmm. Nice shot. Beautiful. A lot of trail work got done that summer. So the trail crews lived with us in the hut during the week and rebuilt the trail up to the cone and also up Monroe. They put all the steps up Monroe. A lot of those washed out within a year or two, but they worked hard on it. We got to be good friends with trail crews that summer.
This was the summer that I was new to the huts. Tim and I were both from Barrington, Rhode Island, and he was like my icon. So I got to work on his crew, and a friend of ours, Link Cleveland, has quoted over and over as though it's his authentic story, something that actually happened to me, which was semi-comical, which was that we had a lot of through hikers that came through. And, one night they were particularly belligerent about we were overloaded at the hut, so we couldn't put them up like we usually did. So Tim said, Bill, I want you to take them down the AMI to an illegal campsite so they can stay there. And so I took them down the hill, and I thought I was being really, really generous and fun. And I showed them this beautiful campsite, illegal, next to the river. And I said, you guys, I think you'll be really comfortable here tonight. And they turned to me and they said, go back to your clapboard palace in the sky, man. Tim had told them previously, it looks like you've got a lot of really authentic, good camping equipment here. You don't really need to stay in the hut. And they said, you think we bought this stuff, man? We ripped it off. So it was one of these hilarious situations where you couldn't even make it up.
Gotta love the 70s.
Yeah.
This is Fred Walsh. I'll talk about
I love the
76.
70s.
Yeah, 76, and share with Dave Albala. I have to say that for me, working in the huts, other places in addition to lakes, it's what I would call a Camelot period in my life. Extraordinary people, extraordinary part of the planet. We've all woken up early at lakes, seen those clouds below the peaks and the sun pop up through the clouds. These are life things that mean a lot to us all. And the people, funny stuff too. Listening to Billy and Jack talk about 75. I know that year I was at Mizpah, I was a cook. I was sleeping buck naked in the third bunk up top, and they came down and raided me. I was the only guy in the hut. We had a fist fight for about 5 minutes on the floor, the wooden floor. And I think they left, and that's probably when they got the prop they talked about. But, we did the same to lakes from later on in Mizpah, when I was at lakes. But, extraordinary people and extraordinary place. And I call, as I said, a real Camelot period in my life.
I'll tell you one funny story about Fred Walsh. Fred, when we were at Lakes in 76, when I was the hut master, and Fred said, I think what we ought to do is, as you remember, we had those white aprons that you'd get really dirty and, you send them off to get clean. He said, I think we should pack in an apron. So all we had were limbers on and an apron. Hiked up to the summit, and one of the guys in the ops took a picture, and you saw, Fred and I, two butt cheeks on each of us, and talking to somebody, and he sent it to Joel White, and Joel called me down to Pinkham at one point, called me in the office, and he said, I got this from a concerned hiker. And what it really, I think Fred was right. It's these years, I think really shape you as an individual. And I can tell you, for me, I think I've been successful as a surgeon because of my years in the huts. I think what I learned, the lessons that you learn, may not help you directly with what you do today, but indirectly they make you the person that you are. And I think just by seeing everybody on this call, it just shows what this time that we spend up here really did for all of us.
Yeah.
Here, here.
Yep.
I'll vouch for that.
David, I just want to say, as Fred's son, I really appreciate that story. And I really appreciate what all of you are saying. It's an incredible journey throughout the history that I've known and haven't lived. And thank you all.
That's incredible, because I think Fred got his job by networking at Lakes with all the high finance bankers that were coming through, and when he said, geez, maybe I want to work on Wall Street. Next thing you know, he's working at Morgan Stanley. So So it really is, it's really a melting pot and really kind of shapes what we've all done in our futures. So
When I applied to graduate school at Columbia University, I got in as a teaching assistant for a particular person. And it wasn't until I got there that I realized that he had seen me at Lakes in 1962 and was impressed. And he wanted someone who knew the outdoors to work in the graduate program. And so my whole future life essentially came out of Lakes.
If I could just throw in something back from before, because going back to when I started.
Incredible.
If I could just throw something back when I was back in 55, I came up to the summit to pack and I didn't really know anything about that. And so one of the crew, and I don't remember who it was, fixed my pack board up. And of course I could just about stand up with it. I weighed all of 125 pounds. And we started down and the clouds were thick as could be. And I was afraid to take a crump because I thought I'd lose my way and I wouldn't find the hut. So I just stood behind him when he took a rest and finally got down to the hut. And Roger Foster, Al Starkey was hut master. And he said, you know how to cook? And I said, not really. He said, well, you're cooking tomorrow morning for breakfast and you have between now and then to learn how. So thank God somebody on the crew took me under their wing and helped me out.
Did anybody ever pack down gasoline in a jerry can? I remember
I did.
I used to pack 3 of those down and have to make damn sure there was no thunderstorm coming along.
Yeah, I packed those down, and as a matter of fact, I was packing down 2 of them, and we did have a thunderstorm, and I dropped that load and ran down to the hut. I said, I'll come back the next day for it.
Well, when we had the telephone line in, that was the big thing on the thunderstorm.
Yeah.
I got knocked clean across the kitchen by spark that came down that way.
We had an arc that went across the kitchen also, and burned out some stuff on the other side of the kitchen.
Remember when SS Pierce was providing a lot of canned goods?
Yeah.
When the strange crawl came through the system each summer, that's the AMC annual range walk through the hut. This was before scheduled meals in the huts, and I think we tried to serve purple plums every night for dinner, for dessert, all the way through the system. I think that the Gophers weren't too happy with that.
They were trying to get it so that the range walk didn't have the same meal in every hut.
Well, but they had the same dessert every night.
They deserved it. This is Doug. I'd like to add one comment here. I forgot who it was asked about that cruise sign that they have. But I would encourage all of you to, if you have pictures or memorabilia like that, we have kind of an OH archive set up now with Becky Fullerton, who is the AMC archivist, and stuff was spread around all over the place. But I would encourage you to try to get the things that you have to her. I'm sorry I don't have her email right in front of me, but if you look up Becky Fullerton online with AMC and get in touch with her, I'm sure she would make arrangements to get that stuff to her and preserved. It's easy now because you have electronic pictures. It's easy to transfer them, but the old 35mm slides and what have you, or even black and white pictures, if you send them to her, she will scan them and put them into the system, into the archives.
I'll include her email in the follow-up to this call, so it'll be there.
Is that Peter?
I'm trying to find my slides, but I think I've got a one of. It's a group came up with a llama And they brought the llama in, and I have a photo of the llama's head going through the registration window there. I bet that's the one of them.
Great.
Was that the Dalai Lama?
I just wanted to say one other thing. I just wanted to thank Peter for putting this thing together. And
Yes.
and Peter, this was a great idea. And maybe it took COVID to pull it together, and make it really happen. But I think this is, I got to tell you, this was on my schedule, and there was no way I was going to miss this event because, it's great to see, Paul and Jeannie. I mean, you get to see all these people that you haven't seen in years. And I really kudos to you for organizing it. And I know it took some time, and I just personally want to thank you, from the group, because it really was a fun evening.
Well, being
Yes, thank
in
you, Paul.
Wyoming and having spent a lot of time in California, I've only made it to one OH meeting. And so this suddenly looked like a great opportunity to reconnect. And those of us that were active together in 60, 61, 62 were pretty well connected at this point. But it's really been fun to hear everybody's story here.
Thank you very much, Peter.
Do it on a regular basis, every year, every other year or something. And I know I tried to find some pictures, and I know I got someplace, but hopefully it'd be fun to just do it again.
One story we didn't get in tonight was in 1960, Clark Dean brought his motorcycle down to Lakes. And I helped him get it down there, and then he kept it out by the side of Monroe. And as soon as the goofers sat down for dinner, he would come flying in on his motorcycle and get off looking all confused and say, I think I took a wrong turn back there.
That's great.
And I remember one night there was a lot of confusion that followed, and we started with dinner again. And one of the goofers said, well, isn't he going to stay for dinner?
That's a famous story. I remember telling that story myself, even though I didn't know the people involved at all. But before we sign off, I want to ask a question. Has anyone been to Lakes this summer and have an up-to-date report on how the summer went without any guests? But I gather still a minimal crew to keep it safe. Does anyone have a up-to-date?
Alan Coop.
Yeah, I
Alan
went.
Coop.
I get to, just because of proximity and a lack of imagination in hiking destinations, I've probably been at lakes more than any other human being. So I often drive to the summit and wander down. And I went this summer just to see what it was like. My first trip, it was really weird to see a padlock on the outside door. And they had a crew there, and they were there pretty much, I think, to keep people from breaking in. But slowly what happened over the summer is they realized, unless they open the bathrooms of the high huts, people would just go everywhere. So they opened the bathrooms. You could go in one person at a time, masked, to use the bathroom. And they also put a water spigot on the outside of all the huts, so people could get water. At Lakes, they began to sell tacos and candy through the window. You couldn't hang out inside. I was able to go in and say, I want to look at the crew picture and things like that. But it felt really strange. The crew said what was strange about it was really busy in the daytime, but nobody was there at night. So it must have been a strange thing. I mean, in one sense, it was nice, but of course, it didn't have the dynamic and the vitality that made the place a home to all of us. So it was mostly, maybe someone else, maybe you got up there, Jeff, I don't know. I went a few times, but then because it seemed so strange, frequently I would just not go to the hut itself. I go to the lakes or down the old Crawford Path or something like that. It just seemed, not the place to be.
It's been wonderful to hear our common experiences, but it is too bad that for this summer and perhaps for next summer, this is not going to be the same. And so kids in school, whether it's high school or in college, are just going to miss this kind of bonding and this kind of experiences, which shaped us all so much. It's really sad to see this go away for 2 summers.
And also Pinkham Notch and the Highland Center are closed as of today, I think. until further notice. The first time in 100 years that Pinkham Notch Camp has been closed since Joe Dodge took over.
Well,
That's pretty disappointing.
If any of you are interested in taking a trip to lakes in the successor to Guinea Night, they have one night where all the hut crews go down into the valley and have a party. And for that night, they entreat alumni to come and run the hut. And for the last 5 or 6 years, this summer being the exception, my daughter and I, but mostly her, because she worked at lakes in the 90s, or no, in the early 2000s, have gone and run lakes for one night, and we bring family and friends and run the hut for the night. And you quickly realize why this is a job for 20-year-olds. Because it is,
I agree.
Even with 15 or 20 of us, it's a hell of a lot of work. And if anybody's interested, it's a lot of fun. And with this email list, I'll let people know when that is, if it happens next summer.
Well, Paul, I've had the pleasure of doing that.
That's real.
Yeah, Jed
That's
Davis
really
has
funny.
been a
This
couple of
Bill Blay
times.
again. That's really funny because I was hut master in 1978, and we reunited our crew 10 years later in 1988. And I remember packing down to the hut and thinking I was such a hero, and then actually having to put on a meal and bend over those big steel sinks that we used to have at the hut. I was a physical ruin for like a week after doing that job. That is such a difficult.
Yeah,
it is so hard.
Yeah, go ahead, John.
One of the things I want to say, if anyone's interested in going back, is there's no more crew table in the kitchen. It's a big change in the hut, I think, that they redesigned the kitchen without having any room for the crew to have its own place to sit. They have to go out in the dining room and sit when they have a meal.
Wow.
I really miss the times I've gone back with Jed to do these Guinea Night cruise. I've really missed the kitchen table that was so important to us. I think.
How long has that been gone?
None of the huts have crew tables anymore.
Yeah.
How long have they
And
been
they don't do crew chow anymore. They sit around the kitchen and nibble while they're serving the goofers. So crew chow isn't part of the tradition anymore, which I think is a shame because it brings the crew together.
I think
that crew table
was done in the early 2000s, and that was it's moved so it's on the side. It looks out where the water tank used to be. No more view down the Ammy.
Well, Jed didn't you organize, what year is that? You had your entire crew back with a couple hangers on like me, but 50 years after?
Yeah, we did.
Huh?
John did.
Yeah, introduced everybody. You introduced yourselves the way you had that summer.
That's right. Right. Yeah, I think we had 5 of the 7 of us. All 7 of us are still in touch, but I think we had 5 of the 7 at that weekend.
I'd like to finish. We were talking about heavy packing and Sid Havely, and he finally, I can't remember the exact story, but he finally packed and got fired for packing over 300 pounds, I think down from Lonesome Lake. It was an old wood stove that had been in the original cabin there, or whatever you want to call the old hut. And he didn't get fired for packing the whole wood stove down, which I think he gave to Steve Liebskin. I could have the story all confused, but he got fired because he borrowed a goofer's car to go around to do the job in. And when he got back, I think it was probably Bruce found out about it and said, "You're fired." And that was the end of Sid. He probably came back later, but That's the way I remember the story.
Oh,
Could I add a little story? I was the last hire by Joe Dodge in the late 50s. And he said, I'll hire you if you can keep up with Brooksy going up to Madison.
Oh, settle.
So of course, he was an Olympic skier, and I followed him, and I was right behind him, way ahead of everybody else. Then I got a stone in my foot, and so I had to take the stone out. But I got there second. Everybody else was like 45 minutes behind. He still hired me as a closer, and that's when I got to Lakes. I wasn't the only guy that I know is Jed. We went to Mount Everest together about 16 years ago. But I've heard of all you guys, but I spent most of my time at Greenleaf, which was you had to climb up a lot to get to.
A lot.
Yeah, a lot.
We don't do that kind of thing.
I have the strongest knees in the world. Good to see you, Jed.
Thanks to Peter again. I'm signing off myself. So everybody be well.
yeah, stay.
Peter.
Thank you,
Let's
Peter.
get
Hey,
through
Peter.
this year and wish it was over.
Yeah.
Peter, what a great idea this was.
Yeah, thanks,
Thank you
Peter.
so much for putting it together.
Thank you, Peter.
Thank you very much.
Peter.
Yeah, thank you, Peter. It was just great to see everybody. Thanks for organizing it. A real hit. Do it again. Bye, everybody.
Thank you, Peter.
It's been fun.
Good night, everybody.
Thank you.
Dan.